Hi, Russell, welcome to the Reading Fabricator, and today I'm going to discuss with you 8 books which I think are criminally underrated, underappreciated. Now, these are books that range from the 1950s through to, I think, the last couple of years. I think this one might have come out last year-ish. But yeah, so let's get into it. The first one I'm going to talk about is Jack Kerouac's Big Sur. Now, Big Sur, technically it's been read a lot, but I don't think anyone talks about it anywhere near as much as On the Road or The Dharma Bums or even Mexico City Blues, you know, his poetry collection, which took off. You know, those ones get a lot of praise, a lot of attention, but I think Big Sur is a stunning, vivid, and utterly wrecking book. I consider it to be a combination of the three. So with On the Road, you have, you know, his carefree lifestyle. The Dharma Bums, it transitions to, you know, him trying to find Zen. And then it all culminates with Big Sur, where he just completely crumbles down and is an alcoholic wreck, and has this amazingly written breakdown towards the end of the book. It's truly vivid and fascinating, and I just want to give a big shout out to it because I think it's the best thing he ever wrote. I think it's better than On the Road. I think it's better than I think it's absolutely fascinating, and it's a shame that you know his life trajectory went downhill after Big Sur. You know, because this came out in, I think, 58 or something like that, and within 10 years, Kerouac was dead. He just completely went downhill, and Big Sur was the start of it. You started to see the cracks in his persona, and it's tremendously sad, but he still writes like a king. There are some people who don't like his writing style, and I understand that, but I think Big Sur is it's just completely forgotten, swept under the rug in comparison to his other work. So do give it a shot. It's very good. Big Sur. The next one is Thomas Pynchon with Vineland. One of the first books of his I ever read. I read Inherent Vice, Crying Lot 49, and then Vineland, and it got destroyed. I mean, it came 17 years or so after Gravity's Rainbow. So of course you've got a book that's following one of the greatest books of the 20th century. You've got the long wait for it. So you just could not live up to the hype, no matter what he put out. It could have been a great book that he put out. It would not have been able to live up to the anticipation of the release, given the time period that spanned since Gravity's Rainbow. Famously, David Foster Wallace wrote to a friend, I can't remember if it was Franzen or something like that, and wrote that it's as if Pynchon went into the woods in California in a cabin and just spent all day smoking pot and watching TV for a long time, you know. I think this is fairly undeserved. This is a great book, and it discusses, you know, the hippie era and the fallout of the hippie era in the 80s, you know, Reagan presidency, pretty much. It kind of talks about it in the same way I think Hunter S. Thompson does with Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, in particular the Wave speech, where he talks about how the 60s generation just failed dreadfully in what they were trying to do, what they were hoping to achieve, and how the 80s just came and gobbled them up pretty much. I think this here encompasses that quite well. And that's not to say that it's, you know, all downbeat and all that. There's some hilarious stuff going on in here, including the main characters, I think Zoid Wheeler, who, you know, who gets insurance checks and all that by pretty much doing outlandish injuries, pretty much. And there's also the Godzilla episode. I mean, that was weird. That shows up about halfway through the book, but I quite enjoyed that. So there's still got that zany Pynchon-esque ideas going on. It's just that underneath that, there's this political. I don't really know how to say it, but there's just this hint of sadness that he's trying to achieve and trying to direct to you, that just slowly creeps up on you. And I find Vineland, a lot of the reviews say it's hilarious, but there is a definite sadness to it, pretty much. Also, fun fact, one of the characters from Crying Lot 49 makes an appearance in Vineland, so there's always this entanglement going on with all these books. There's always characters popping in and out. So yeah, look, it is probably considered his worst book, but to my mind, he has yet to write a bad book. So even his worst are still greater than 99% of what's out there. Do not listen to what people say about this. Give this one a shot. It's very, very good. A very great read, actually. Very, very good. Paul Thomas Anderson was famously going to talk about adapting this before he secured the rights to Inherent Vice. So, I mean, either way, you're going to get a great film out of it. But in the end, that's Vineland. Next up is Stone Junction, probably the longest book I have here by Jim Dodge. Some 1,400, 2,000 people on Goodreads have read this. Still not much though. It's also got an introduction by the Thomas Pynchon himself. And that's what made me pick this up. It was in a cult section at a bookshop. And honestly, it's weird, it's wonderful, it's got myth, magic, some forms of magical realism. It's all set in America though. And the first 100 pages follow the mother and the kid, and then the rest of the book follows the kid as he grows up and learns different tricks and trades from different people over the course of these years, pretty much. And it's irresistible, it's glorious really. Bonkers is actually a great word to describe it, but it's and kaleidoscopic pretty much. I don't really have much more to say about it. I haven't read this in like 2 years, but from what I remember, this here was a book that, I mean, I don't think there's any videos out there of people talking about this, except for maybe one that I did on my previous channel. But look, it's a long read. I mean, it's like coming up 500 pages. But when you get to the end, you sort of close it and you think, what the hell did I just read? But not in a bad way, in a very good way. It's very good. I can understand why Pynchon gave an introduction to this book. It's definitely in his ballpark. If you like his work, give Jim Dodge's Stone Junction a shot. I'm sure you'll like it as well. Not very talked about this book, so please give it a shot. Next up is J.G. Ballard, Concrete Island. Now, when you think of Ballard, you think Empire of the Sun, High Rise, Crash, The Atrocity Exhibition, The Drowned World. I'm pretty sure there's another couple of other ones out there. But in between the release of High Rise and Crash and The Atrocity Exhibition, he released this small little novella, Concrete Island. And I think this is a great place to begin with his work. Is it his best work? In my opinion, no. But it gives you an idea of his themes. It gives you an idea of his ideas, of how he writes characters in certain situations that seem unbelievable, but when you think about it, are prescient, that could possibly happen. Concrete Island is the story of a man who drives off an intersection on a highway and ends up in this concrete island where on all sides is like, the roads are something like 10 meters up in the air. So he's stuck on this island, and you find other characters that are living there willingly. And it follows him as he sort of just becomes a subject to this place and eventually learns to live with it. I won't give away the ending, but it does proceed from there. Very, very fascinating, and a very short book, so you can be done with it quite quickly, and is underread. Very, very underread. It's got an introduction by Neil Gaiman as well. So look, there are plenty of critics out there who think of it as a great piece of work, and in a way it is. But it's just nowhere near as talked about as quite a lot of Ballard's other books. He was a prolific writer, so obviously this would get lost in the jumble. But look, I think this one deserves a little bit more attention, so give this one a shot, Concrete Island. Next up is the most recent book on the list, Jim Carrey's and Dana Vachon's Memoirs and Misinformation. Now, this here, I think I spoke about it in one of my previous videos, but it is possibly the most maligned book I've ever read. The Goodreads puts it at like 2.8 or something like that on the rating scale. And there's a lot of people who I think were drawn in with the idea of it being a memoir or autobiography and pretty much finishing it or not finishing it because they just realized that it was just an absolute zany mess. And it is a mess, but it's a fascinating mess, and I loved every single minute of it. There's celebrity cameos, there's sci-fi, there's existential dread, and the existential dread comes in from page 1 onwards. So look, if you're going to go into it thinking about you'll get something out of Jim Carrey's life, you're not gonna end this well. You're not gonna get far. What you want to do is you want to go in this completely level-headed and empty of all ideas on expectations, and just let it consume you, because in these pages here are chunks of wisdom and delight and memories of Jim Carrey's real life, and you piece it together, and what you put together forms a cohesive idea of Jim Carrey as a man. And it has probably the greatest supporting character of any book I've read this year in Nicolas Cage. More books should have Nicolas Cage as a fictional character because he's absolutely hilarious. And every time he shows up on the book, I read it faster because I just want to know more and more about him. So yeah, it's a delight, a satirical delight. Memoirs, Misinformation. The sixth book is by the recently reappraised John Williams, and that is Butcher's Crossing. Now, everyone knows Stoner. They talk about it, they talk about it, they talk about it. It's one of the greatest books of all time, one of the greatest campus books of all time. And, you know, there are just as many people who praise Augustus, which I think won the National Book Award that year. No one talks about his first one, Butcher's Crossing, which I consider to be a great anti-Western and a great look into the fur trade. It involves a college student who drops out of university to go to the frontier, basically, and kill bison. He gets picked up by this group, and they go out to this place where they heard, it's in a valley where they heard that literally thousands of bison roam, or sorry, not bison, buffalo, yeah, thousands of buffalo roam. And what follows is, in the middle third, you get given this episode where they discuss just moving through the valley, pushing the buffalo back and constantly shooting them dead and skinning them and leaving a dead in their wakes. As they're pushing forward, you see all the bodies behind them piling up. And it's described in such a way that, you know, you'd wish Cormac McCarthy wrote it. It's up there with Cormac McCarthy's writing for Blood Meridian. Very, very well written. I haven't even read Stoner, but I know for a damn fact this does not get talked about as much. Please give this one a read. It's damn good. Damn good. And very, very provocative. I think, yeah, provocative is a good word to describe it. Not a long book as well. Neither of his books are long, but yeah, as far as I know, this is a damn good place to start, and I really want to read Stoner now. So that's Butcher's Crossing. The second last book is The Minotaur Takes a Cigarette Break by Stephen Sherrill. This is another one I picked up in a cult section of a bookstore in North Perth, and it involves the Minotaur from the Labyrinth from Crete, who basically decides he's had enough of tormenting people in the labyrinth, so he escapes and ends up in southern USA, basically working as a line chef, and no one bats an eye at this. They pretty much just take it all in. It's just, they treat him as just another person pretty much, and it follows his life over the course of this time period. Pretty much, he lives in a camper trailer. He gets into all sorts of hijinks. He can barely talk, but he'll let out words here and there. And over the period of this book, you sort of basically become attached to him, and you don't want to see anything bad happen to him. I will not spoil the ending, but it pretty much shows that he has a longing for being in a human world and for being understood. And despite any good intentions he has, there's always going to be someone out there who will see of what he's doing as possibly being a bad thing. The characters that surround him are all eccentric. That's a good way to describe it. But I think it's a wonderful, wonderful read. I read through this in like a week, and Anthony Bourdain is a massive fan of this book as well. As is Neil Gaiman. He put it in his canon selection. It was available on Audible, and it was part of a series that he produced. So I refer to this book as melancholic, funny, sad, and disturbing in parts. Yes, but it's also very good, and you sort of have to put realism aside. You just have to accept it for what it is. And I really like the cover as well. I think it's a fun cover. But again, this one, just like Stone Junction, it barely has any Goodreads ratings. No one's talking about it. No one's reading it. Please read this. It's a damn good book. Minotaur Takes a Cigarette Break. And the last one, the 8th book. This one I might get some backlash for, because there's going to be plenty of people out there who say, oh, no, he gets plenty of attention and that sort of thing. It's Child of God, Cormac McCarthy. Now, yes, Child of God is a book that has been read by thousands and thousands of people, but here's the thing. Everyone talks about Blood Meridian. Everyone talks about the greatness of Suttree. Everyone talks about No Country for Old Men, The Road, All the Pretty Horses, the first third of The Crossing. No one talks about, you know, some of his earlier stuff, and in my mind, his best one of the first three, Child of God. And it's a slim novella, and I usually recommend it to people as a starting point, alongside No Country for Old Men and maybe All the Pretty Horses. It gives you an idea of his work, a glimpse into his work. It's also incredibly disturbing and definitely much more on the, you know, brutal end of his bibliography. It follows Lester Ballard, who is a social outcast, and he eventually succumbs to his animalistic desires after being pretty much pushed to the edges of civilization. It's as if civilization just did not want him. They just got rid of him, and so he had no choice but to just become this violent, solitary, introverted man who succumbs to his inner desires without any laws. It has an unforgettable ending, and it's written in his same unique style, although what he wrote after Child of God is a lot more, you know, has a lot of $1,000 words. So there's a lot more going on in those books here. But this one here, I mean, it's got pages like that, so you can get through this in one sitting if you wanted to. It's apocalyptic is also a great word to describe it, but although you can use that to describe half of his other books as well. So, yes, it has been read by many, but I still think plenty of people still need to read this Child of God. So those are the 8 books that I consider underappreciated. If you have any thoughts about that, let me know. Just drop a comment below, or even contact me on Instagram at The Reading Fabricator. And yeah, let me know if there are any other books that you think are underappreciated, or if you think I'm wrong about these ones here. Otherwise, yeah, see ya. Have a good day, everyone.